To the other side of our studio, where Regina Manyara has an interview for you, just to give you a breakdown and analysis with Jim McFie, the director of Strathmore University. Regina.
And on that note, we start off with this conversation. A 3.7 trillion shillings proposed budget the very first under the Kenya Kwanza administration. Is it feasible? Looking at KRA's performance that has been given a revenue target of 2.5 trillion shillings. Your take?
My take is, first of all, I think it's a good budget. And I think, we have to become very, very much more balanced in Kenya than is the case at the moment. We tend to blame other people for our problems. And I think it's so important to, first of all, to be very positive about things, because the budget last year was quite below what it is today. But in fact, the government last year spent 3.3 billion because they increased it and so on. So when we look at 3.3 billion to this year's 3.6 billion, it's less than a 10% increase. In fact, we got to remember that, inflation, last October was running at 9.6%. It's come down. It's now just below 9%. But I think even from an inflation point of view, that is not a very much bigger figure. I think the focus is right. I think also we got to remember, God has been really very, very good to us this year with the rains. The rains came in early. I know some people down in Ukambani, they planted early. They've already got a crop. So if we actually are positive enough, I think we can say it's a really good budget. And let me just try to explain one of the things on VAT. I drive a car. I'm not the poorest person in Kenya. I think the people who are driving cars in Kenya can afford to pay that additional 8%, all right, of VAT. Now, what about diesel? Let's suppose that I'm a transporter and I'm going to transport for you and I'm going to charge you 200 million shillings. When I charge you 200 million shillings, I'll actually raise from you 32 billion shillings in VAT, okay? And we always talk about spreading the tax net in Kenya. In fact, we have done so. When I was working many years ago in Ernst & Young, the top rate of tax in Kenya was 70%. The top rate today is half that, 35%. And it's for people who are earning more than 800,000 shillings a month. Not many people are actually going to suffer that. And also, the 32.5%, you've got to remember that the rate of tax in Germany and Sweden and in the Denmark and so on, those countries, the top rate of tax is 60-70%. So we are, in fact, living in a tax haven, although Kenyans will say, we pay so much tax.
Let me just become the devil's advocate in this particular set. And let's look at
let me just complete the thing of VAT. Now, when I charge you, I'm going to get 32 million shillings. Yes. I've actually got to, pay that across to KRA. Now, if the price of diesel goes up by, let's say 100 million shillings without the VAT, it's now 116. So when I buy this diesel, I have to pay 116 million. But that 16 million, I offset it against the 32 million that I collect from you. So in this case here, I pay 16 million, okay? So the total is going to be 32. We say, this VAT is going to put up the cost of business. Okay. Nonsense. That's because people don't understand what VAT is all about. Even some people in KRA. But no, that's another story.
Okay, so from where you sit is that this is actually a good budget.
This is a good budget.
Actually worry about the increase in VAT, especially on petroleum products. But manufacturers would actually argue it differently. First of all, the cost of energy. You see, they run their machines. They usually pass the buck to consumers. Here we are now. That element of cost of production definitely will be borne by you and I as we buy these commodities. So how is that helping me as a Kenyan who is already struggling with the high cost of living?
Now let's suppose first of all, a lot of people will run their machines using electricity. Some people, the KTDA farmers, their factories actually burn diesel. It'll be an added cost to them. They shouldn't be doing that. They should be using, we've got plenty of, although our forest cover is, only 12%. According to the World Bank, it's 6.3%. We're trying to increase that. But to my mind, this is an industry. The whole thing of the charcoal industry is an industry which, again, is shrouded in ignorance in Kenya. And that's another story, okay? But you get me again, I'll try to explain the whole thing there. But, for example, Brazil produces 11% of the charcoal in the world, okay? We're not even on the chart there. Okay. Egypt. But anyway, in this case here, okay, let's suppose that I'm buying diesel and I'm running my machines on diesel. I will then have to pay 16% VAT. But that VAT is offset against the output VAT, which I charge you. So again, we go back to the 100 million and the 200 million. In this case here, what will happen is, instead of paying 24 million previously, I now pay less. I pay less 16 million. So putting VAT at 16% on VAT, if a person is telling you, look, this is going to increase the cost of doing business in Kenya, that person is ignorant. And he's got to learn. Okay.
Ignorant is the word. Okay, then we look at some of the areas that, the government has prioritized in this particular budget. We have health. We also have education. Comparing to other, budgets of the past, what would you, from where you sit then, what has really informed, these priority areas? Is it of the beta agenda?
Well, you see, I think you've got to remember that we're in a period of transition there, okay? We have the junior secondary, and what happened was, to my mind, it was quite a sensible decision to retain that in primary. Now, you've always got to think about the school, because let's suppose I'm running a private school, okay? Now, I actually have people coming in at the moment who've done KCPE, but you see, the problem now is that I'm going to have KCPE next year, but the year after that, okay, I'm going to lack a class. So I'm going to run into difficulties there. Now, since there are more children in primary schools, obviously the senior primary has got to get more money. And I think, that explains why exactly that is happening. I think all the other things, HELB is obviously going to get 30 billion instead of 15 billion. I think that's a very good thing because, but I think also at the moment I may be a very rich person. I may have you as my daughter, sending you for 16,000 shillings a year to Nairobi University. It doesn't make sense. Here, if I'm rich, there's got to be a means test. If I'm a rich person, I've got to pay full fees, and that's what the plan is in the new jurisdiction. I agree with that fully. You agree with that.
Now, since you've mentioned about, the move that the government also has adopted is that they've introduced 2 tax bands, for those who are earning 500,000
to 800.
Yeah. In expanding, but will it really have the impact that it was meant to have, given that not a majority of people actually are in this earning class or this band?
Yeah. Well, personally, I'm against raising interest tax, because I always feel, Kenya from outside is an incredibly attractive destination. If you read in The Nation what the outgoing British High Commissioner wrote about Kenya, you realize that this lady fell in love with Kenya. And let's face it, many people do that. They come to Kenya and they say, oh, well, okay, I'm not going back.
Are you speaking for yourself? Anyway, that's what
No, I was born in Nairobi, so good. I don't have to worry. But for example, I know 2 Russians, I won't tell you their names, but they're in Kenya because they don't want to fight the army, you see, so they're not going back to Russia. And they've fallen in love with Kenya. But anyway, the point here really is, I was talking to a foreign investor in about October last year, And KRA are giving him the runaround. And he said, his words to me were, look, Jim, I never realized that it is so difficult to run a business in Kenya. Mm-hmm. So, we talk at this level. We're making it easier to run business.
But on ground, it does not.
On the ground, I produce accountants. I'm educating accountants. And where are they getting jobs? Bermuda, London, Guernsey, the Cayman Islands, the United States, Canada. So, we need to expand our economy. We need to make it easier. We talk about all these things.
So let's get it. The question was expanding the tax band there, and I asked if it will have the overall multiplier effect that the government is looking at.
It's not going to produce a really significant amount of income. To my mind, it would be better to leave it at 30%. That's one area where I don't agree with the budget. But it's not going to affect too many people. Let's face it. And I think they can afford it. Mm-hmm. The only thing is, I think we're sending the wrong signal to the world, okay? Because, Kenya's got to remain as attractive as it is. You see, what we got to remember...
In terms of foreign direct investment, right?
Well,
can we pick it up from there after the break?
Okay,
well, let's take a quick break. Well, we are trying to unpack the 3.7 trillion shillings proposed budget there that was presented in Parliament, Cynthia. So I think it's time we take a quick breather, but we'll still continue having this conversation, and you can be part of the conversation. Our Twitter handle is at KBC Channel 1.
Hazina ya fidia ya wanabima, the Policy Holders Compensation Fund, PCF, shirika la kiserikali chini ya hazina ya kitaifa na mipango ya kiuchumi iliyoanzishwa chini ya sheria ya bunge kwa jukumu la kulipa fidia kwa madai ya wanabima waliowekwa chini ya usimamizi wa serikali au wale ambao leseni zao zimebatilishwa. Hazina hii pia ilianzishwa kwa lengo la kuimarisha imani katika sekta ya bima. The Policy Holders Compensation Fund, dhamana ya bima yako.
Aviator instant game. Be a daring pilot and earn by how much high you can lift the plane. The higher you fly, the higher your win. The sky is the limit. Mozart Bet.
Welcome to East Africa. This is Safari Rally Kenya.
The WRC Safari Rally is set for June 22nd to June 25th in Naivasha. This year's event, the 7th leg of the WRC calendar, consisting of 19 stages, will see drivers, among them defending champion and series leader Khalid Vanpera, battle in what's considered as the toughest rally in the world. KBC Channel 1 will bring you the action to your living room, where a total of only 5 stages will be broadcast live on KBC Channel 1 and the Shakedown exclusive on our Facebook page. Catch the WRC Safari Rally on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
You're still watching Prime Edition, and tonight we're speaking matters budget. Jim McFie, before we took a break, you said that the only reason, or rather the only area that you do not agree with the government is in regard to, the introduction of the tax ban. Let me take you back to the issue of the VAT 16 on petroleum products. What if we're looking at right now, OPEC has reduced its production, of fuel. And supposing it's a matter of when actually the prices go up. What is the ripple effect back here at home if this particular proposal passes as is on the transport index?
Yeah. Well, I think, let me try to explain this in 2 ways, okay? Because we have to remember that, 3 years ago, what happened was that the price of petroleum went down to $35 a barrel. It then went up to $100 a barrel, and even more. Is now sitting at about $70 a barrel. But you see, 2 years ago, $70 multiplied by 100 gives you 7,000 shillings.
Yes.
$70 at today's exchange rate will give you 9,800 shillings.
Yep.
So there's a 40% increase in the oil, in the price of oil, in terms of Kenya shillings.
Yes.
Now, let's go back a little bit though. Why is the Kenya shilling losing value against the dollar? It's because of the fact that we've got a trade deficit of almost 2 trillion shillings. In other words, we're importing from the world 2 trillion shillings more than what we're exporting. Now, if the price of oil goes up, using basic economics, demand and supply, what should happen is that we should use less oil. I'm trying myself to limit my travel by car, okay? I'm 1 out of 4.5 million Kenyans who own a car, so that's nothing. But if we all did something, because the biggest single import cost to our economy is oil. Is oil itself, okay? So if we reduced, and for example, if I'm using charcoal, I was talking earlier, and you're using kerosene, I'm actually building the economy of Kenya, and you are actually increasing our trade deficit, and therefore contributing. If we had more exports than imports, the Kenya shilling would be rising against the dollar. But anyway, now back to the point.
We want
so in this case, the matatus will actually have, the matatu passengers will have to pay more if they're whether it's petrol or diesel.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll have to pay more.
We'll have to pay more.
So we need to brace.
Yeah.
So as we wind up this particular session, would you say that this particular budget is pro-Wanjiku or not? As we come to a close, in your perspective, give us the pros and cons.
Ni ngumu. Kwa sababu, the situation is that, there are always plus and always minuses. A lot of people are actually concentrating on the thing of oil, because let's face it, transport is a very, very important sector of our economy. But you see, we've also got to keep in mind that the government is spending a lot of money on education, public education. The difficulty really, is that that's always going to become harder and harder in Kenya, because 1.2 million babies are born every year. But I have young ladies I know, they're giving birth to babies, and the thing is, 384,000, more than 30% of those children are to single mothers. And they need scholarships, and you have children at school producing children, so they're not even earning. So this is going to become more and more of a burden to Kenya's economy, and I think we've got to be aware of that. Interest obviously is the biggest single item, and if we can somehow try to reduce the infrastructure bond rate, it's 14.3% at the moment.
Yes.
That would, if we were to bring it down to 10%, that would really reduce that 986 billion. But Regina, let me just mention one other thing, which is really drastic. The national government is pending bills. In other words, expenditure has been incurred, and they haven't paid the bills of 537.2 billion. And the counties 157.9 billion, to give a total of 695 billion.
And that, Jim, actually, when the CS was reading out this particular budget, he said that their plans are underway to have a task force of sort, or a committee that is going to be, I know, I can see you shaking your head, but I think this is the new CS trying to, do away with this situation that is pending bills. But we'll still have a conversation when it comes to the budget. But for now, that's the first session of our conversation tonight as we unpack the budget 2023-2024, the very first under the Kenya Kwanza administration, that is pegged at 3.7 trillion shillings. To you, Cynthia.